You bought the plant in April because it was already blooming. 4-inch pot, $12. The tag said low maintenance, full sun, deer resistant. You took home 3. The 1st June, they looked perfect. The 2nd June, you wondered if you should divide them. The 3rd June, one had crossed under the fence into your neighbor's roses, and another was coming up 6 feet from where you planted it. By the 5th June, you were renting a sod cutter. Here is what the garden center will never tell you. 11 states list at least one of these 13 plants as invasive. The big box stores in those states stock them anyway. The plant tags don't mention it. These are the 13. Number 1 is toxic to dogs, toxic to people, and the previous owner of my house planted some that I am still digging out. For each one, what I plant instead. Number 13, mountain bluet. The first thing I noticed was the blue, cornflower blue. The honeybees were on it from morning till the angle of the light turned. A friend gave me a single division from her garden, that is how it usually starts, and I planted it in the corner by the gate. By the 3rd spring, there were 11 of them. I had not planted 10 more. The original had seeded itself into the gravel path, into the cracks of the patio, into the lawn 10 feet away. The seedlings come up looking exactly like the parent, only there are dozens of them, and they bloom for 2 weeks in May before becoming brown, ragged sticks by June. Connecticut classifies it as potentially invasive and banned from sale. Washington State has it on the regulated list. Old-time gardeners knew not to let it seed. Modern gardeners get one from a friend and learn the hard way. What I plant instead, catmint walker's low, Nepeta racemosa, long blue flowering, same height, same bee traffic, completely sterile. It was the Perennial Plant Association Plant of the Year in 2007 for a reason. Plant 1. You will have 1, not 11. Number 12, lamb's ear Stachys byzantina. The label says silver. It isn't. It is pale gray-green and as soft as the inside of a child's wrist. My grandmother grew a swath of them along the front walk, and she let me run my hand across the leaves when I was 5 years old. That is why I planted them. Memory is a terrible reason to put something in your garden. For 3 weeks in late May, the rosettes look magnificent. Then the first thunderstorm comes through. The leaves flatten to the ground, wet and gray, and they do not stand back up. By July, it is sodden. By August, it is a brown mat that you start pulling out by the handful, and there are stolons running underneath, white and tough, and you find they have crossed under the iris bed. Instead, I plant Artemisia silvermound, Artemisia schmidtiana, thread-like silver foliage, mounded shape, does not flop in rain, does not run, stays exactly where you put it. Soft enough that a 5-year-old could still drag a hand across it. Number 11, sweet woodruff, Galium odoratum. This one breaks my heart because it is fragrant. It smells the way I want my whole garden to smell, like fresh hay and vanilla, especially when you crush a leaf or step on a patch in the rain. The Germans dry it for May wine. It blooms tiny white star flowers under the oak trees in May. It looks like the cover of a romantic gardening book. It is also a rhizome spreader that does not stop. I planted a single 1-gallon pot under the corner of the porch where nothing else would grow. 5 years later, it had filled 400 square feet. 10 years later, it was coming up under the foundation. By the time I gave up and laid down rubberized weed cloth, it was growing on top of it. It is relentless. It is not on most state invasive lists because most botanists think of it as confined to gardens. In a real garden, it confines itself the way a fire confines itself to a kitchen. The plant I put there now is wild ginger, Asarum canadense, a native East Coast woodland ground cover with heart-shaped glossy leaves. It spreads slowly enough that you can actually pull a piece up if you need to. It will not smell like May wine, and it will not eat your house. Quick thing before I keep going. Every plant in this list is sitting in a big box garden center this weekend with a hopeful tag. Most tags say spreads quickly instead of spreads aggressively. By the time you find out what they actually do, you are 5 years in and the receipt is long gone. A woman named Kelly wrote me in the comments she and her husband spent 2 seasons pulling Lily of the Valley out of a back bed. He finally got the rest out, and then he discovered it had come up on top of the rubberized weed cloth they had laid down. Drop your state in the comments. That helps me know who will fight which plant. Let me show you the next 10. Number 10. Sedum Autumn Joy. Every retired couple in America has it. The corner of the perennial bed, between the boxwood and the bird bath. 4 big mounds with the broccoli pink flower heads that turn dusty red in October. The catalog editors love it because it photographs well in late summer when nothing else does. The first year it stands upright. The second year it stands upright. The third year and every year after, the stems weaken in July. The heavy flower heads start tilting outward, and by August the whole plant looks like a flower vase somebody knocked over. The center opens up like a donut, and rain fills it. You can stake it. You can prune it back in June to make it shorter. You can divide it every 2 years, or you can stop planting it. I plant Sedum matrona now. Same family, stiffer stems, dusty purple-pink heads that stay upright through the first frost. Stronger constitution, does the same job in the same spot, and does not flop. Number 9. Forget-me-not. Tiny blue flowers appear in May. 5 petals, a yellow eye in the center. My grandmother grew them under the lilac bush and called them those little blues. A woman named Sandy told me in the comments that it took her 5 years of constant digging to get rid of hers. She said, "What a mistake," and she meant it. This is a short-lived perennial that lives the way an invasive plant does. It blooms in May and it seeds in June. The seeds are like Velcro, and they stick to your pant cuffs and to the dog's underbelly. Next April, there are hundreds of seedlings, and they choke out the small bulbs and the new perennial divisions before those have a chance. What I would plant in its place is Brunera Jack Frost, Brunera macrophylla, tiny blue flowers in May, the same 5 petals and the same yellow eye. Heart-shaped, silver-veined leaves that last all summer. Clump forming, it will not seed itself across the garden. It was the perennial plant of the year in 2012. One of those plants the catalogs got right. Number 8. Crocosmia Lucifer, Crocosmia ex Crocosmia flora. The red is the kind a hummingbird sees from a quarter mile away. Tall, arching stems, spear-shaped foliage, and mid-July to late August bloom. Gorgeous, but an aggressive spreader. When the photograph went around the gardening magazines, I bought a 3-pack at a roadside nursery in Vermont and put them along the west fence. By year 4, there were 40 plants in a clump 12 feet wide. I dug them up, or I thought I did. Every corm I missed, and there are dozens the size of a marble layered 6 inches deep, sprouted the next spring. I have been working that bed for 15 years, and I still find 1 or 2 pop up every June. California, Oregon, and Washington list the species as invasive in some habitats. The cultivar Lucifer is supposedly less aggressive. Mine did not get the memo. The plant that does the same job is red-hot poker, Knifophia. The variety flamenco gives you the same tropical drama, the same hummingbird traffic in clumps that stay where you put them. Cut the spent flower spikes in August. Done. Number 7. Garden Phlox, old varieties. The 1st August, I had old garden phlox. It was beautiful, pale lavender, fragrant, 4 feet tall, exactly like the plant my mother grew on Long Island. The 2nd August, I noticed a chalk gray coating on the lower leaves. By Labor Day, the leaves had dropped and the stems were bare from the ground all the way up to the flower head. That is powdery mildew. Cool nights, humid air, leaves that don't dry. The old varieties, Bright Eyes, Robert Poor, and Mount Fuji were bred before mildew resistance mattered. They catch it every year unless you spray. Most catalogs still sell them. Most catalogs do not warn you. What I plant instead is Phlox David, pure white, 4 feet tall. It blooms from August through September and is almost completely mildew resistant. The Matt Cuba Center in Delaware ran a multi-year phlox trial, and David came out at the top. It was named Perennial Plant of the Year in 2002. There is also Gina, a pink variety, even more resistant, and the butterflies prefer it. Either one. Don't buy the old ones. The first house we bought came with a perennial border that looked like a postcard, foxglove and peonies and old garden roses. The previous owner had been gardening that ground for years, and she had labels in pencil on little wooden stakes for every plant. I thought I had won the lottery. 3 years in, I realized half of those plants were running. The other half had been keeping them in check, and she had been quietly weeding out the bad behavior every spring. She had not handed me a perennial garden. She had handed me a garden that required her hand to keep being one. That is why I make these lists, because somebody should have told her what to plant and what not to. If you have a regret on this list or one I missed, drop it in the comments. The list keeps growing. Number 6. Snow in Summer, Cerastium tomentosum. The mat of silver gray leaves shows up first in early April, looking like somebody laid a wool blanket over the rock garden. Then the white flowers come in May, thousands of them, low and dense, exactly like fresh snow. The whole bed glows in evening light. It is one of the prettiest moments in a spring garden. You have about 3 weeks to enjoy it. By late June, the center of the patch starts going brown and bald. The stolons keep running outward, 6 inches, 12 inches, 2 feet a season, and the plant abandons its old growth behind it. In July, you have a circle of dead brown in the middle, with green only on the outside ring. By August, it has crossed the path into the lawn, climbed into the dianthus next to it, and come up between the flagstones. What I plant instead is Dianthus firewitch, Dianthus gratianopolitanus, silver gray mat that does not run, magenta pink fringed flowers in May and again in fall. Evergreen foliage that holds through winter. It was the perennial plant of the year in 2006. Stays exactly the size you plant it. No bare middle, no climbing the neighbors. Number 5. Tansy. The yellow button flowers belong in a cottage garden picture book, Grandmother's Tansy. They used to dry it and put sprigs in the linen closet to keep moths away. The leaves smell sharp and herbal when you crush them. The leaves are also toxic. They contain thujone, the same compound as old-school absinthe. And they will kill a horse, sicken a goat, and make a curious dog seriously sick. The state of Washington classifies common tansy as a Class C noxious weed. Colorado lists it on the regulated invasive list. Montana lists it. The plant escapes garden beds the way it escaped Europe 200 years ago. If you have livestock, dogs, or a fence line next to a pasture, this plant is a liability you do not want. Instead, I plant yarrow moonshine, achillea, pale sulfur yellow flat flower heads, ferny silver foliage, blooms June through September. Same yellow in the garden, none of the toxicity. The pollinators love it more than tansy ever did. Number 4. Ostrich fern, Matutia struthiopteris. The fiddleheads in May are one of the best things in a North American spring garden. The way they unfurl like a slow-motion green spring is something I would still want to see every year. I planted a single division along the north side of the house in a damp spot where nothing else wanted to grow. 7 years later, there were 20 of them. After 15 years, they had crossed under the foundation and were coming up in the daylily bed on the other side. The rhizomes run a foot a year, sometimes more, and you cannot pull a piece up without leaving a chunk behind. Native, beautiful, aggressive, in a way the field guides do not adequately warn you about. What I plant in that spot now is Japanese painted fern, Atherium niponicum pictum. Silver burgundy fronds, foot-tall, clump-forming, slowly expanding by a few inches a year. It was the Perennial Plant of the Year in 2004. Same shade tolerance. Stays where you plant it for a decade. Number 3. Mint, mentha. Every gardener under 60 has done this once. You buy a 4-inch pot of spearmint or peppermint at the herb table in May because you want fresh mint for tea or for cocktails. You plant it in the corner of the herb bed. Within 2 summers, it has crossed the basil, taken over the parsley, sent runners under the brick walk, and come up in the lawn 3 feet away. Mint does not grow in clumps. It grows by long white stolons just under the surface, and every node on every stolon can become a new plant. You cannot dig it out. You can only contain it, and the standard advice is to sink a 5-gallon pot into the ground with the rim above grade, plant the mint inside the pot, and even then, a runner will eventually creep over the rim. What I plant now: anise hyssop agastache foeniculum. Tall lavender flower spikes, leaves that smell of licorice with a hint of mint when you crush them. Bees, hummingbirds, butterflies. Reseeds gently, but never runs. The leaves make a tea every bit as good as mint, and you do not need to fight it. A word about zones before I get to number 1. This list works for USDA zones 4 through 9, most of the country from northern Minnesota down to central Florida. Number 2 on this list is zone sensitive. If you live north of zone 7, it will freeze out for you and you do not need to worry about it. South of zone 7, it will eat your fence line. Number 1 will grow for almost anyone in this country. Number 1 is the one I would warn the previous owner of your house about if I could send a letter back in time. Here it is. Number 2, Mexican Petunia, Ruellia simplex. If you live in Zone 8, Zone 9, Zone 10, or Zone 11, you have seen this one. Tall stems, lance-shaped leaves, purple trumpet flowers that bloom from May until frost. Florida garden centers move pallets of it. Texas nurseries sell it. Big box stores in the Carolinas still stock it every spring. A woman named Pam wrote me in the comments she has helped neighbors dig it out. She once declined to bid on a house she loved because the backyard had a thicket of Mexican petunia she would have needed a bulldozer to remove. That is not exaggeration. Florida classifies it as a Category 1 invasive, the highest tier, and the plant has escaped gardens into wetlands across the south. There is a sterile cultivar called Mayan that does not seed. The labels rarely mention which one you are buying. A better choice is Salvia black and blue, Salvia guaranitica. True cobalt blue tubular flowers from June to frost, 4 feet tall, hummingbird magnet, hardy in zones 7 through 10, clump forming, won't run, won't escape, doing the same job in the same heat without becoming a regulated weed. Number 1, Star of Bethlehem, Ornithogalum umbulatum. 6 white petals around a green stripe down the back of each one, strap-shaped gray-green leaves that look like miniature daffodil foliage. Each clump puts up a delicate spray of star flowers in late April. The plant came over with European settlers in the 1700s and has been spreading ever since. 6 different state extension offices have written warnings about this bulb. Cornell, Penn State, Rutgers, and Ohio State are among them. The warnings have not slowed catalog sales. The bulbs reproduce by offset. The original makes a dozen babies every season, and every baby makes a dozen of its own. You cannot pull them up. The papery brown bulb breaks off at the neck, and the daughter bulbs stay in the ground. It is toxic. All parts contain cardiac glycosides, the same family of compounds as foxglove and oleander. The bulb is the most concentrated. Children have been poisoned. Dogs have died. Cattle that find a patch in pasture lose weight and die over weeks. A woman named Serena wrote in the comments that the previous owner of her house planted some, and she tried to eradicate it, but she could not. The previous owner of my house planted some. I am still digging them out of beds I have not planted in years. What I plant instead is Siberian iris, Iris sibirica. slender, upright foliage, blue or purple or white flowers in May, clump-forming, well-behaved, deer-resistant. The cultivar Caesar's brother is the standard, deep purple, decades in commerce, blooms reliably. Plant a clump. It will live in the same spot, in the same shape, for the rest of your life. Nobody will inherit a problem. 13 plants I would not put in my garden today. One alternative for every single one. If you are gardening in your 50s, your 60s, your 70s and beyond, and most of you watching this are, these are the lessons I wish someone had given me 30 years ago. Save your back, save your weekends, save your neighbor's roses. If you have a plant on this list or one I missed, drop it in the comments and subscribe if you want the next one. There is always a next one.